Hello everyone, this is Kat and welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfic. This will be the continuation of the Mystery of Midoriya Izuku. This will be Part 5, Chapter 5, entitled Day 3. Shouta wrapped up his patrol after talking with Midoriya, heading home where he immediately face-planted onto the bed next to Hisashi. This means that he got an unprecedented 6 full hours of sleep for a change. He feels almost drunk with how rested he feels. He's ready to fight the entire top 10 chart and win. He feels so well rested as he and Hisashi head to school the next morning. It also significantly improved his mood. Hisashi asked him to rate his anger, saying that it went down from an 8 to a 5 from yesterday. He still plans on avoiding Nezu until they talk again at the end of the week. Usually after one of their disagreements, a couple of days apart is good, if only to regroup mentally. Hopefully by then he'll have a 2 on the angry scale, which is more annoyance than outright anger. Pretty much, it's his normal state of being. On the way to work, Shouta sends an email to both Bakugo and Todoroki, letting them know that he's decided to make their desk swap permanent from here on out. It solves one problem of having Midoriya not near Bakugo anymore. After that, he plans the next part of his investigation, so to speak, talking with the other teachers while Yagi was out for the day. He decides to talk with Hisashi later that night, knowing his husband had been probably paying extra attention. 2 full days of observing Midoriya will give him something to work with. The other teachers that Shouta will probably need to talk with are Nemuri, Cementos, and Ectoplasm. He debates approaching Recovery Girl before deciding otherwise for the time being. He just hopes that the morning will be a bit calmer than yesterday. For once, the universe decides to listen to Shouta and grace him with his wish. He arrives in homeroom to both Bakugo and Todoroki in their new seats. Good, they got his email. Midoriya looks a bit more relaxed as well, even flashing Shouta a small smile as he steps inside. Bakugo's slumped in the very back room, and he's got a scowl on his face, alternating between glaring at the ceiling, the desk, Shouta, and Midoriya. He'll have to keep an eye on the kid during foundational heroics. Shouta really hopes that he doesn't have to move the kid again, otherwise he'll make Bakugo switch with Shoji, putting the kid in the front and center where every teacher can keep an eye on him. Jiro also won't take any shit as well from him either. Shouta raises an eyebrow when the blonde glares at him, projecting an air of, "Do you really want to fight me on this?" and gets a scowl in return. Todoroki, for his part, looks pleased when Shouta walks in. He receives another nod, leaving Shouta feeling like he just passed another sort of test with this red and white-haired student. It would be a lie to say that he hasn't noticed the inclusion of Todoroki into Midoriya's friend group after the sports festival. Following Hosu, the other boy stuck even closer to Midoriya, who seemed uniquely qualified at bringing Todoroki out of his reserved shell. The other boy follows like a sunflower follows the path of the sun, helpless to turn away from it. Really, the switch is logical. Hopefully, Todoroki near Midoriya will bring him out of his shell even more. And Shouta has suspicions about how reserved and socially awkward Todoroki is, the way he refused to use his fire part of his quirk. He knows Endeavor by reputation and through a few unfortunate meetings over the years, but here his hands are tied. No one will investigate the number 2 hero, and Shouta needs Todoroki to say something to him. Once he handles Midoriya, he plans on tackling Todoroki next, him and Mineta. Thankfully, the rest of the meddling kids seem to not want to push the fact that the desk swap seems to be permanent, if only to not make Bakugo explode out of embarrassment. It makes segueing into class all that easier, and the morning lesson for ethics of heroism is a pleasant one. In that, he gives them a pop quiz and relishes the groans. Shouta has to get his amusement from somewhere, after all. By virtue of being his friend longer than the rest of the teachers, except Hisashi, along with having a break in her schedule at the same time as Shouta, he talks with Nemuri about Midoriya first. Despite her entire thing, she's one of the sharpest minds that he knows and keeps an eye over her students like a hawk. And, because Shouta is a generous soul, he makes her a cup of tea, an offering, and apology for the conversation they're about to have. Nemuri has a soft spot for Midoriya as well, who she described as an adorable little bunny with a dragon hiding inside of him. After one too many drinks at karaoke night, no, Shouta is not going to think about karaoke night. It's a once every 3 months kind of affair for good reason. "I'm not helping you hide a body," Nemuri says as she grasps the mug of tea that Shouta made for her. "Not with such a weak bribe anyway. At least give me some cake to go with it." Shouta snorts and falls into the chair next to her desk in a graceless heap. "I don't need you to hide a body." Well, not yet at any rate, but he knows Nemuri would. She's a ride-or-die kind of person like that. "But I do need your observational skills." "Oh," she purrs. "Do you and Hisashi need help to spice things up in the bedroom? Because I have some ideas about—" And there's the part of her that makes Shouta want to crawl into a hole and perhaps never emerge. "It's about Midoriya." he says, pinching the bridge of his nose. He already regrets this entire conversation. He can only hope that cementos and ectoplasm won't test his patience. He can only be glad that Snipe isn't one of Midoriya's teachers. That bastard loves to throw in extra yeehaws just to make Shouta twitch. One of these days, Shouta will snap, and he'll shove that stupid hat where the sun never shines, and feel completely vindicated for it. Namuri narrows her eyes and tilts her head to the side. He sees that protective flash in her eyes, which promises a villain or a pervert will feel the end of her whip in some uncomfortable places. Shouta understands the urge very much. "What about Midoriya?" she asks, leaning back with her tea in hand. "I'm working to set the final exams for my class with Nezu," he says. "I cannot go into details yet, of course. But the pairing that Nezu wishes to move forward with Midoriya doesn't sit well with me. Nothing, actually, has about the kid since the term had started. I've looked at his unrestricted file yesterday, and I would like your unbiased thoughts on him as your student before I go any further." The thing that Shouta appreciates about Namuri is that for all her flirtatious and sexual double talk, when it's time to get serious, she gets serious. She taps the side of her mug thoughtfully for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "He's a sweet kid, very excitable. He does well in my class, knows his stuff about art history or heroes. He did a paper for me. It was like 10 pages on how pre-Quirk era stories about heroes influenced the aesthetics of the first generation of quirked vigilantes and how those effects are still felt in the industry today. Couldn't even fault him on the brick of the report because, frankly, it was that good. Going to use it as an example for my third years, how they should write their term papers." Shouta nods. Midori does the same for him. He's trying to get him to be more concise, if only for the sake of people who'll have to read his incident reports, but the dedication and passion shine through in the factually impeccable work. Yaoyorozu has a similar issue as well, though to a lesser extent. It makes it hard to dock him for it, especially with some others, and their lackluster effort in such things. Namuri continues. "But I think that Midoriya's also been hurt a lot. By people in power, he's skittish in a way that reads bad to me. I don't think the kid trusts any adult outside of maybe All Might, and based on conversations I've overheard, his mother. His relationship with Bakugo, I think, has been misconstrued. I know that All Might believes those two are rivals, maybe even the other teachers do as well, but there's a friendly rivalry, and then there's those two. He tracks Bakugo, have you noticed? He reads his moves. He tries to make himself small when it's a bad day. I was thrilled that you decided to separate them yesterday. Frankly, I think that it should have been done a long time ago." "That's what I've been noticing as well," Shouta agrees, burying his face further into his capture weapon. "His unrestricted file was very eye-opening to me." "How so?" "He didn't get his quirk until the entrance exam. He shares. Nezu knew and didn't tell me. I told Hizashi, and I'm telling you because I know you can keep it quiet. I also think that All Might is in on the know on whatever's going on as well. He wrote the recommendation letter for Midoriya to get into UA. Did you know? The comments from his other teachers are scathing, and his grades don't match the sort of performance that I, you, or Hizashi have noted in class either." Namuri leans back at that, taking a long sip of her tea and looking like she wished that she had something stronger in it. "So essentially he grew up quirkless." "Yes. He knows Namuri's track record on advocacy. She supports a lot of charities centered on abuse and sexual harassment and heroics. She speaks out on protecting those that society turns their back on. The quirkless are chief amongst those, usually the first." "Fuck, that poor kid," she mutters, looking so sad and small in that moment. "I think I'm a little in awe, actually. He probably has the best reason out of all of us to go full villain and still wants to do good." Shouta doesn't answer because, well, there's really nothing that has to be said about that, is there? The talks with cementos and ectoplasm go similarly. Even though Shouta leaves out information on when Problem Child's quirk emerged, both agree that Midoriya is a bright and gifted student, dedicated to his work but does not receive praise well. When he has an issue with an assignment, he tends to handle it himself rather than going to either of them for help. He seems surprised when either of his teachers or his fellow students have a kind word for him in class. "It's like Midoriya is expecting to be punished," Ectoplasm admits with a sigh. "I'm glad you're looking into this, Aizawa. I just thought it was because people find me intimidating." It reinforces what Shouta feels like he knows already, but he's always operated on the motto, trust but verify. In his larger cases, it definitely helped him out a couple of times. Midoriya has no faith in his teachers. Midoriya handles any issue himself before going to an adult, whether it be facing down a serial killer or trying to figure out how to do some geometric proofs. And then there's Bakugo. Namuri's right. There's rivalry, and then there's those two. Shouta's seen a few over his years of teaching. Some are friendly, others were not. Midoriya and Bakugo, however, do not appear to even have a rivalry to begin with. From listening to his class speak to each other during times that he pretends to be asleep in homeroom, Shouta knows the two have known each other since childhood. a childhood that Midoriya was essentially quirkless for. At the end of this, Shouta has a feeling that he's either going to be asking for Bakugo's placement in therapy, removal from Class 1A, from the Heroics Department, or from UA in general. Either way, it doubles down on what Shouta wants and what Problem Child wants as well. Which is why he doesn't want Bakugo and Midoriya fighting against All Might together. Right now, though, he has conjecture. He has observations based on the teachers, but he doesn't think that he has whatever Nezu needs from him. There are things that are not connecting for him quite yet. Covering for foundational heroics is easy enough. Unlike last time, Shouta has the kids in costumes for one-on-one matches. The sparring exercise is a round-robin style. The winner gets to pick the next challenger, and so on and so on. For the first two fighters, Shouta decides to do it the simplest way, drawing straws. The short straws are for the first two competitors, he says, because that seems to be the fairest way to handle the situation to him. Of course, the universe may have decided to give Shouta an easy homeroom, but apparently that doesn't extend to the rest of the day. The universe is cold and uncaring and just is. Still, it's also like the universe has a metaphysical hit out on Midoriya Izuku. Why? Midoriya and Bakugo draw the short straws. Of course they do. Of fucking course they do. Shouta vaguely believes in reincarnation in the cover-all-your-bases sort of way. However, sometimes he wonders who the fuck he pissed off or, murdered or whatever for the universe to test him like this. Or maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was Midoriya. Of course, Problem Child would carry over that sort of karma from a previous life or something. Either way, someone fucked up bad enough for this to carry over to the current life that they're now living. He looks between the two of them. Midoriya fidgets, mouth in tight in a determined line, back tense. Bakugo grins, wild and untamed, like he's thrilled for a school-sanctioned excuse to beat on Midoriya. Shota's more than ready to stop it there and have them redraw. Let's fucking go, Deku! Shouta looks in Midoriya's eyes, narrowed, but the kid shakes his head as if he already knows that Shouta wants to have the lots redrawn. Shouta doesn't like it. He should go with his gut here, but he nods. If he wants Midoriya to trust him, then he's going to trust the kid. He will, however, try to mitigate the damage. One moment. Bakugo, take off your gauntlets. Huh? You heard me. The last time you and Midoriya went one-on-one, you disobeyed a direct order against using them. We'll not be making that mistake again, especially for something like a one-on-one sparring match. Bakugo growls, but he gets the grenade gauntlets off. Shouta would rather them not fight against each other. Some of the tension leaves Midoriya's shoulders, who gives an encouraging smile to his worried friends before turning to follow Bakugo to the ring. First person knocked out the ring loses, Shouta says as he starts the match. And if I see anything I don't like, then I'll be ending it, and you will listen to me. Yes, Aizawa-sensei. Bakugo rolls his eyes and nods, which is probably the best that Shota's going to get from him in this shitstorm of a situation. Go. Bakugo blasts toward Midoriya, who activates full cal and jumps into the air in a crackle of green lightning. Midoriya's strategy against Bakugo, Shouta admits, is pretty clever. Rather than go head-to-head, the smaller student uses avoidance. He jumps around, up and over from one end of the ring to the other. The blonde's blasts get more powerful, the more he sweats. This is true. It's also harder on Bakugo's wrists and arms, though. Yes, he could get one or two real powerful blasts against Midoriya, along with the minor ones, but explosion is a quirk. Every quirk has a drawback. Midoriya understands this and his opponent. Even if he can't wait out the drawbacks to explosion's overuse, it had the dual purpose of frustrating Bakugo, who let his anger get to him. Bakugo was in the top 5 of the class for a good reason as well. He had great control over his quirk, though Shouta had some suspicions on how that was achieved, was smart in fighting the battles, and was quick on his feet. He also knew Midoriya well. Stop fucking jumping, you shitty Deku! Spar with me! Are you a fucking coward? Midoriya lands with his expression fierce. He's unbending, that sort of battle-calm zen has settled over his student. It really is night and day from his normal personality. I'm not a coward, Kachan. Then fucking fight me! Bakugo roars as he blasts across the ring. Midoriya again jumps into the air, but this one's tighter, more controlled. He lands behind Bakugo before the other boy can turn around, and he pushes Bakugo out of the ring. He has to give it to the problem child. He knows how to clinch a victory in unconventional ways. For once, it didn't break his body as well. Midoriya wins, he says. Pick your... Bakugo roars, turning around with his hands up as if he wants to blow Midoriya's face off. Shouta activates his quirk before the full impact can be unleashed and wraps his capture weapon around Bakugo, who wrestles in its confines. Uraraka and Ida rush over to Midoriya, who's trying very hard not to tremble. Todoroki, Shouta notices, moves to stand closer to him rather than head to Midoriya to glare at Bakugo. We're turning those few days of detention into 2 additional weeks, Bakugo, Shouta informs him. Do something like that again and you'll be expelled. In fact, you're done for the day. Go run laps around the outer perimeter of the building to cool off. No quirks. It wasn't a fucking spar, Bakugo shouts back. Deku! Shouta feels exhausted because this feels like the sports festival all over again, and he still wants to wring the collective necks of the board of directors for making them chain the kid up to accept his damn medal. The only objective was to get the opponent out of the ring. Midoriya did so. Not every fight you'll be in as a hero will be fists or support items. He outthought you, Bakugo. Now go. Shouta releases Bakugo, who growls before jogging off. Midoriya watches him go before meeting Shota's eyes. There's that indefinable emotion in them. Awe, hope, disbelief. Maybe it's all three of them. Either way, he stares at Shouta with those big green eyes. He meets them. You okay, problem child? Midoriya jumps before nodding. Yes, I'm all right, Aizawa-sensei. Then pick your next opponent. The rest of the spars go well after that. Midoriya is eventually beaten by Uraraka through a clever application of her quirk via some martial arts that she learned from Gunhead. When class ends, he sees Kirishima approach Bakugo with a frown on his face. He's the only one in class who seems to be able to get the explosive teen into some semblance of calm. But it shouldn't be on him to do so. Kirishima has his own stuff to worry about. Bakugo's anger is definitely becoming an issue in the classroom setting. Shouta makes a report to Hound Dog, asking if he can set some time aside to feel the kid out. It's something he should have done months ago. At the very least, it's the first step of getting Bakugo into anger management classes. He emails it over to the counselor and makes sure to CC Nezu on it as well. He leans back in his chair, stares at his computer. Shouta thinks of Midoriya, who looks at him with wide and surprised eyes whenever he does the bare minimum of care as a teacher. He thinks of Nomuri's observations and Bakugo's sense of entitlement. He thinks of being a child himself with power that people wrote off as bad or weak, the lack of care given to him as a result by the adults in his own life. He thinks of teachers who told him to stop making things up when the other kids had bullied him. He thinks of being a kid with more smarts than sense, with determination fueling him to get between bullies and their victims, with a deep burning desire to prove himself. Midoriya Izuku and Aizawa Shouta are more alike than either of them would think at first glance. He opens up Midoriya's basic file, which has the names of junior high and elementary school, and draft emails to the principals of them as well about meetings with them the next day. It's time to get some real answers, even though Shouta feels like he's going to hate what he finds. But for far too long, there's been a line in the sand, Midoriya or Bakugo, quirkless and quirked, and it's more than time that someone picks one over the other. Shouta picks his side and hits send. All right, everyone. This concludes Chapter 5 of The Mystery of Midoriya Izuku. Chapter 6 will be next. I hope you all are still enjoying this one, and as always, thank you so much for listening.